In the quiet moments before you decide whether to forgive or to let go, there is a space, a sacred pause where your mind, body, and spirit meet. It is here that true clarity is born. Forgiveness is not about forgetting or condoning the pain caused by others, nor is letting go a surrender to weakness. Instead, both are profound acts of inner mastery, informed by how deeply you understand your own heart and nervous system. When you learn to listen to this silent dialogue within, you unlock a wisdom that gently guides you toward freedom, whether that freedom comes from embracing compassion or choosing release. Today, we explore how this inner wisdom, grounded in ancient insight and modern science, can help every woman find her way through the complex emotions of forgiveness and letting go. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as an act of weakness or concession, but the truth is far more profound. At its core, forgiveness is an inner act, a conscious choice you make for yourself rather than for anyone else. It is not a transaction or a performance aimed at reconciliation or approval. Instead, forgiveness is the deliberate decision to release the weight of suffering that clings to your heart. Neuroscience helps us understand this in remarkable ways. When we forgive, our brain's emotional centers begin to rewire. Areas such as the amygdala, responsible for fear and anger, become less reactive, while the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought and empathy, grows stronger. This biological transformation supports emotional resilience, reducing the toxic stress that can otherwise consume us. Imagine a woman named May, who was hurt deeply by a friend's betrayal. For years, she held on to the pain, replaying the moment over and over, letting it shape her relationships and cloud her trust. When she finally embraced forgiveness, not to excuse what happened, but to free herself, she felt an immediate shift. Her body relaxed, her mind cleared, and her relationships began to heal in ways she had not imagined possible. Forgiveness gave Mai the space to reclaim her peace, reminding us that this act is always for our own liberation first. Yet, forgiveness is not synonymous with forgetting. It does not mean you erase the lessons learned or pretend the pain never existed. Instead, it is about acknowledging what happened, recognizing your own humanity, and deciding that the hurt will no longer define you. This shift is an act of power, rooted in self-mastery. From the perspective of Eastern philosophy, forgiveness is a path toward harmony within, where the mind and heart cease their battle, and instead find balance. What many do not realize is that unforgiveness keeps us trapped in a cycle of reactivity. When you hold grudges or resentments, your nervous system remains in a heightened state of alert. Chronic activation of the stress response floods your body with cortisol, a hormone that, when sustained, damages organs, impairs immune function, and even ages your brain prematurely. By forgiving, you effectively reduce this internal strain, allowing your body to heal alongside your spirit. It is a holistic transformation. There is a common misconception that forgiving someone means you must reconcile or restore the relationship exactly as it was before. But true forgiveness is independent of others' actions. It is a private, internal surrender that shifts your energy away from bitterness and toward peace. Sometimes, the person you forgive will never change or seek your forgiveness, and that is beyond your control. What remains within your grasp is your choice to let go of the burden and reclaim your emotional freedom. In relationships, this internal act becomes even more crucial. When you forgive from a place of centeredness, you invite healthier interactions, deeper empathy, and emotional clarity. Forgiveness serves as a foundation from which compassion can arise, not for the other's benefit alone, but as a reflection of your own growth and understanding. It is a strength that fosters connection rather than distance. Yet, there are moments when forgiveness alone is insufficient, when holding on becomes self-destructive. This brings us to the next point: recognizing the energy drain when attachment turns toxic. Emotional attachments can be nourishing, but when they bind you to anxiety, fear, or pain, they begin to erode your well-being. Physiologically, this kind of chronic emotional distress manifests in the body through disrupted sleep, elevated heart rates, and a cascade of hormonal imbalances that leave you exhausted and depleted. Consider the story of Leon, who remained in a relationship where respect was scarce and criticism was constant. She forgave her partner's missteps repeatedly, believing that forgiveness meant endurance. However, over time, the relationship's toxicity affected her physical health. Her energy waned, her mind became foggy, and her spirit dimmed. This is a clear sign that the attachment was no longer a source of growth, but a drain on her vitality. Eastern philosophy offers guidance here through the practice of discernment, knowing when to hold compassion and when to release attachment. Compassion does not mean suffering in silence or ignoring your pain. Instead, it asks you to observe your experience clearly, to recognize when your emotional investment is harming rather than healing. This is the wisdom of balance, to love without losing yourself. In modern science, this idea resonates with what we understand about the nervous system's regulation. When you remain emotionally tethered to a source of ongoing distress, your sympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for fight, flight, or freeze, is perpetually activated. This prevents your parasympathetic system, which supports rest, digestion, and recovery, from engaging fully. The result is chronic stress, which diminishes your capacity for joy and authentic connection. Letting go, then, is not giving up. It is an act of preserving your personal energy and clarity. It is a courageous choice to prioritize your health and inner peace over a relationship or situation that no longer serves your highest good. In this, there is no shame, only wisdom. To illustrate, there is an ancient Chinese story about a woman who kept holding onto a broken branch, hoping it would heal and bloom again. Eventually, she realized that by releasing it, the branch could no longer weigh her down, and she could focus on nurturing the living tree beside her. This metaphor captures the essence of letting go. Sometimes the act of release is the greatest form of love you can give yourself. Both forgiveness and letting go require emotional discipline, a steady cultivation of inner awareness. The body plays a critical role in this process. Practices such as mindful breathing and conscious posture regulation are not merely calming techniques. They are transformative tools that influence your nervous system's state. When you breathe slowly and deeply, your vagus nerve, the key pathway for parasympathetic activation, is stimulated, signaling your body that it is safe to relax. This physiological safety enables you to face emotional pain without overwhelm and make clearer decisions about your relationships. In daily life, when you notice feelings of anger or hurt rising, pause to observe your breath. Lengthen the exhale, soften your shoulders, and ground your presence in your body. This simple act creates a pause between stimulus and response, giving you space to choose forgiveness or letting go from a place of clarity rather than reaction. Emotional discipline also means developing an honest relationship with your feelings. It is natural to feel anger, sadness, or confusion when wronged. The key is to honor these emotions without becoming enslaved by them. A woman who masters this balance cultivates what Eastern teachings call Wu Wei, the art of effortless action, responding fluidly rather than forcing or resisting. Over time, this practice rewires your habitual patterns. You become less reactive to triggers and more centered in your responses. This inner mastery reflects outwardly in your relationships, fostering greater authenticity and mutual respect. Forgiveness and letting go cease to be battles, but become natural expressions of your evolving self-awareness. In this process, it is essential to remember that you are not alone. Emotional wounds and relational challenges are part of the human experience. Each act of forgiveness or release connects you to a deeper wisdom shared across cultures and ages. As the poet Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." When you embrace forgiveness or choose to let go, you allow that light to enter, transforming pain into growth. There is a powerful interplay between your inner state and your external world. When your nervous system is calm and balanced, you radiate a presence that attracts healthier connections. Conversely, when you carry unresolved pain, it colors your interactions with others, often perpetuating cycles of misunderstanding or hurt. This is why the journey inward, through forgiveness and letting go, is so vital, not only for your own well-being but also for the quality of your relationships. Imagine a woman in a gathering who holds herself with calm dignity, her breath steady, her posture open. This presence, cultivated through consistent inner work, speaks volumes. People are naturally drawn to her, sensing her groundedness and emotional clarity. She embodies a quiet strength that does not demand attention but invites connection. This magnetic quality arises not from external validation, but from the harmony she has cultivated within. As you reflect on your own experiences, Consider what emotional attachments may be draining your energy or limiting your growth. What hurts have you carried silently that need your conscious forgiveness? How might your breath and presence help you create the space for this healing? Remember, forgiveness and letting go are not binary choices but fluid aspects of a larger journey towards self, mastery, and authentic connection. The path is not always easy. Sometimes forgiveness feels impossible, and letting go seems like abandonment. Yet, with patient practice and compassionate discipline, you can navigate these complex emotions with grace. Each step forward, no matter how small, is a testament to your courage and commitment to your own well-being. Through this process, you discover that forgiveness and letting go are ultimately acts of love. Love for yourself, for your peace, and for the life you deserve to live fully and freely. They become tools of transformation, opening the door to deeper emotional freedom and richer, more authentic relationships. Forgiveness and letting go, as we have explored, require an extraordinary kind of inner discipline, one that emerges from emotional awareness and the ability to regulate our reactions. This emotional discipline is not about suppressing feelings or denying pain. Rather, it is the practice of cultivating a conscious presence, a calm observer within ourselves that can hold space for discomfort without becoming overwhelmed. In relationships, this skill is invaluable. It allows a woman to navigate the turbulent waters of hurt and disappointment with clarity and grace, choosing her responses from a place of strength rather than vulnerability to emotional upheaval. One of the most effective tools in this emotional discipline is the awareness of breath and body posture. When a woman learns to slow her breathing and align her body in a posture of openness and groundedness, she sends powerful signals to her nervous system. Neuroscience has revealed how closely breath and posture influence the autonomic nervous system, the balance between the sympathetic, fight or flight, and parasympathetic, rest and digest branches. When the breath is shallow and the body tense, the sympathetic nervous system dominates, priming the individual for stress responses that narrow perception and limit empathy. This is the space where impulsive reactions and unresolved pain thrive. But when breath deepens and posture softens yet remains upright, shoulders relaxed, chest open, spine aligned, the parasympathetic system engages. This invites a calm, centered state where emotional regulation becomes possible. The body and mind enter a harmonious dialogue, creating a fertile ground for forgiveness and the wise choice of whether to continue or let go of a relationship. This is not theoretical. Many women have discovered this truth through their own experience. For example, a woman who practiced mindful breathing during moments of anger found herself able to listen deeply rather than react impulsively to hurtful words from a partner. Her calm presence invited a different kind of conversation, one rooted in understanding rather than conflict. Eastern traditions have long understood this mind-body connection. The concept of zanshin, or mindfulness of posture, teaches that the way we hold our bodies reflects and shapes our mental state. When we cultivate stillness in body and breath, we develop the capacity to hold difficult emotions without being swept away by them. This practice is a form of emotional discipline that empowers women to reclaim control over their inner worlds even in the midst of relational storms. Emotional discipline is also about developing the ability to witness one's feelings without becoming identified with them. Pain, anger, and betrayal are part of the human experience, but they do not have to define the self. A woman who masters this discipline can observe these emotions as passing phenomena, waves that rise and fall, rather than as permanent states or truths. This witnessing creates space for compassion toward oneself and others, allowing forgiveness to arise not from denial, but from deep acceptance. In the context of relationships, this discipline fosters not only self-mastery, but also deeper connection. When a woman responds with awareness and calm rather than reactivity, she models emotional safety for her partner and those around her. This presence can soften defenses, invite vulnerability, and build trust. Forgiveness, then, becomes a shared experience rather than a solitary act. It is through this mutual emotional regulation that relationships deepen and transform. Yet, relationships often serve as mirrors reflecting our unconscious patterns and unresolved wounds. When someone repeatedly triggers anger, fear, or sadness within us, it is not merely about their behavior, but about the parts of ourselves that remain unhealed. This mirroring can be uncomfortable, but it holds immense potential for growth. A woman who looks deeply at the pain stirred by another's actions may discover inner beliefs or childhood wounds that have shaped her responses. This insight is a gateway to healing. Consider the story of a woman named Anya, who found herself repeatedly hurt by her partner's critical remarks. At first, she blamed him entirely, feeling justified in her resentment. But as she engaged in introspection and therapy, she realized that her sensitivity was tied to early experiences of feeling unworthy. This awareness did not excuse her partner's behavior, but gave her a new framework to understand her reactions. With this knowledge, Anya was able to communicate her needs more clearly and establish boundaries that protected her emotional well-being. This process exemplifies how relationships can serve as catalysts for self-mastery. Rather than viewing conflict as a sign of failure, a woman who embraces this perspective sees it as an invitation to deepen her self-awareness. Forgiveness and letting go become not just responses to others but acts of profound self-care and transformation. The psychological concept of projection also sheds light on this dynamic. Often, the qualities we find most challenging in others are reflections of parts of ourselves that we have yet to integrate. Recognizing this allows a woman to take responsibility for her inner world rather than blaming external circumstances alone. This responsibility is empowering because it shifts the locus of control back to her. Forgiveness then extends inward as much as outward. Forgiving oneself for perceived flaws, mistakes, or vulnerabilities is foundational to forgiving others. This internal forgiveness creates a compassionate lens through which relationships are viewed, allowing space for imperfection and growth. At the same time, this inner work helps clarify when letting go is necessary. If a relationship consistently activates unresolved wounds without fostering healing, it may be a sign that the mirror is reflecting a part of oneself that needs tending outside that relationship. Holding on in such circumstances can perpetuate cycles of pain and stifle growth. Letting go is not abandonment, but a recognition that some mirrors must be faced alone. It is an act of honoring one's journey toward wholeness and choosing environments that support this evolution. When a woman lets go with awareness and love for herself and the other, she opens the door to new possibilities, new mirrors that reflect her growth rather than her wounds. The ancient Taoist teaching of Wu Wei, or effortless action, applies here as well. Letting go is not a forced severance but a natural unfolding that arises when resistance ceases. Like a river releasing fallen leaves, the wise woman allows what no longer serves to flow away gently, trusting in the flow of life's cycles. In this way, forgiveness and letting go are deeply interconnected. Both require emotional discipline, presence, and self-awareness. They are not opposites but complementary forces that guide a woman toward emotional freedom and authentic connection. Throughout this journey, cultivating presence through breath and posture anchors the woman in her power. This presence is the source from which wise decisions emerge, whether to forgive and heal or to release and transform. It is the foundation of inner strength that sustains her through life's inevitable challenges. This ongoing practice is a testament to the profound connection between mind, body, and spirit. It reminds us that forgiveness and letting go are not merely emotional acts, but holistic processes that engage our entire being. They invite us to step into our fullness as conscious, compassionate, and courageous women. When we speak about the power of self-worth and personal boundaries in relationships, we are touching upon one of the most profound and often overlooked keys to emotional freedom and relational harmony. Self-worth is the deep, unshakable knowing of one's inherent value, not contingent upon approval, success, or the fluctuating opinions of others, but rooted in a fundamental recognition of one's own dignity and humanity. Boundaries are the practical expressions of this self-worth. They are the lines we draw, not to isolate or punish others, but to protect our energy, preserve our emotional well-being, and create a safe space where love can be genuine and mutual. Many women find themselves at a crossroads when deciding whether to forgive or let go, often because they have not fully cultivated this internal foundation of self-worth. When we lack this foundation, forgiveness can sometimes become an act of self-sacrifice, a giving away of power in the hope of keeping peace or gaining acceptance. On the other hand, letting go without a clear sense of self-worth can feel like abandonment or failure. Yet, when self-worth is strong and boundaries are clear, forgiveness becomes a healing gift we give to ourselves rather than a concession to another's wrongdoing. Similarly, letting go becomes an empowered choice to honor our own growth and integrity. This journey towards self-worth and boundary setting is deeply transformative but often requires conscious intention and sustained practice. The reason it is so essential is that without self-worth, women may tolerate emotional neglect, verbal abuse, or subtle forms of manipulation disguised as care or love. They may stay in relationships that diminish their light because they believe, on some level, that they do not deserve better. This dynamic is heartbreaking but also illuminating because it reveals where healing is needed most. In one real-life story, Mei Ling, a woman in her early 40s, had stayed in a relationship marked by repeated disrespect and emotional withdrawal for many years. She often blamed herself for her partner's coldness, internalizing his criticisms as truths about her own inadequacies. Over time, her sense of self-worth eroded, and forgiveness became a complicated cycle of hoping for change while enduring pain. Mei Ling's breakthrough came when she started attending meditation and self-awareness workshops inspired by Eastern philosophy. Through these practices, she began to cultivate a deep, gentle awareness of her own value that was not dependent on her partner's actions or approval. The mindfulness practices she learned helped her recognize the difference between unconditional self-love and conditional acceptance of mistreatment. She began to set small but firm boundaries, declining to engage in conversations that left her feeling diminished, prioritizing time for self-care, and gently communicating her needs without fear. This was not an overnight transformation, but each step built her inner strength and clarity. As her self-worth deepened, forgiveness shifted from a painful obligation to a conscious release, and letting go became a possibility that honored her dignity rather than punishing the other. Psychologically, this process aligns with what is known as self-compassion, a concept extensively researched by Dr. Kristen Neff. Self-compassion involves treating oneself with the same kindness and understanding that one would offer a dear friend. It involves recognizing our common humanity and acknowledging our struggles without harsh judgment. When a woman embraces self-compassion, she creates an internal environment where healing can occur naturally, where mistakes and failures are not reasons for self-condemnation, but invitations to learn and grow. Establishing boundaries flows naturally from this self-compassion because it acknowledges that protecting one's emotional and physical space is not selfish. It is necessary. Boundaries serve as an act of respect towards oneself and others. They communicate clearly what is acceptable and what is not, allowing relationships to develop in healthy, sustainable ways. Without boundaries, forgiveness can become a slippery slope into enabling harmful patterns or sacrificing one's peace for the sake of attachment. Consider another example. Sophia, a woman in her 60s, who spent decades in a marriage where her emotional needs were consistently sidelined. For years, she forgave her husband's dismissiveness, believing that her love required endurance and patience. Yet, she never set boundaries about what behavior she would no longer tolerate. Eventually, this led to a deep resentment that poisoned their connection. It was only when Sophia embraced her own worth and set clear boundaries about communication and respect that the relationship shifted. Forgiveness became a heartfelt process rather than a mask for enduring pain, and the possibility of letting go emerged as an option rooted in self-love rather than despair. From a physiological perspective, the practice of setting boundaries and honoring self-worth also affects our nervous system in profound ways. Chronic exposure to relational stress, such as feeling disrespected or emotionally unsafe, activates the sympathetic nervous system, leading to sustained states of fight, flight, or freeze. This not only affects mental health but also physical well-being, manifesting as fatigue, inflammation, or other stress-related conditions. When a woman learns to recognize these signs within her body and respond by reinforcing her boundaries, she supports nervous system regulation and invites healing. Breathing practices again play a crucial role here. Intentional, slow diaphragmatic breathing signals the vagus nerve to engage the parasympathetic nervous system, calming the body and mind. This calmness strengthens the capacity to hold firm boundaries without becoming reactive or aggressive. It creates a centered presence from which clear communication flows, enhancing the quality of relationships rather than fracturing them. The concept of energetic boundaries is also significant. In Eastern philosophy, the flow of energy, or qi, is central to well-being. When personal energy is protected by strong boundaries, it circulates freely and supports vitality. When boundaries are weak or porous, energy can become scattered or depleted, leaving one vulnerable to emotional exhaustion or manipulation. A woman who respects her energetic space through mindful practices, healthy communication, and self-care preserves her vitality and cultivates a magnetic presence that naturally attracts respectful, loving connections. In real-life relationship dynamics, this energetic aspect can be observed in how a woman carries herself when she honors her boundaries. There is a natural confidence and calm that comes from this alignment. Others sense this strength and often respond with greater respect and care. Conversely, when boundaries are unclear or violated, relational tensions escalate, creating cycles of hurt and misunderstanding. Forgiveness intertwined with boundaries also requires wisdom about timing. Sometimes, the right boundary may be to take space temporarily, to step back from a relationship in order to reflect and heal. This pause is not a rejection, but a mindful choice to preserve one's emotional ecosystem. In this space, a woman can evaluate whether forgiveness is possible and what form it should take. She can also discern whether the relationship nurtures her growth or hinders it. This notion echoes the Buddhist teaching of right effort, where effort is neither forced nor negligent, but balanced and wise. Forgiveness practiced without boundaries can become harmful. Boundaries practiced without forgiveness can become rigid and isolating. The interplay of these two qualities requires ongoing attention and flexibility. An illustrative story comes from a woman named Layla, who after years of caregiving for a partner struggling with addiction, reached a point where she had to set strict boundaries for her own survival. She communicated her limits clearly, including the necessity for sobriety and mutual respect. At the same time, she worked on forgiveness, not as a permission for relapse or harm, but as a release of resentment and bitterness that could poison her heart. Her boundaries created safety, her forgiveness created peace. Together, they supported a relational environment where true healing could begin. This balance is the essence of self-mastery in relationships. It requires an ongoing practice of listening to one's inner signals, emotional, physical, and energetic, and responding with kindness and firmness. It invites a woman to be both soft and strong, compassionate and clear. In this journey, community and support are invaluable. The courage to assert boundaries and deepen self-worth often grows in spaces of trust and understanding. Sharing experiences with others who walk similar paths fosters resilience and insight. It reminds a woman that she is not alone in her struggles or aspirations. Thus, self-worth and boundaries are not isolated concepts, but part of a holistic way of living that integrates mind, body, heart, and spirit. They cultivate a fertile ground where forgiveness is authentic, and letting go is a conscious act of love for oneself and the natural flow of life. This inner alignment ripples outward, transforming not only individual relationships, but the very way a woman engages with the world. Her presence becomes a beacon of integrity and grace, inviting others to step into their own power and authenticity. The path is neither easy nor linear, but it is profoundly rewarding. It teaches that the true power to forgive or let go lies not in circumstances or others' actions, but in the mastery of one's own heart and mind. This mastery is the essence of freedom, the freedom to choose peace, to cultivate love, and to live with purpose and dignity. When we explore the profound role of inner awareness and presence in the delicate decision of when to forgive or let go, we are stepping into the very heart of self-mastery. This principle transcends simple advice or strategies. It invites a woman into a deep, ongoing dialogue with her own being, a practice of tuning into the subtle whispers of her body, mind, and spirit that guide her through the complex terrain of relationships. Inner awareness is the foundation upon which clarity, peace, and authentic connection are built. Imagine a quiet moment, a woman sitting alone in stillness, her eyes closed, breathing slowly, deeply. In this stillness, she begins to notice the sensations within her body, the tightness in her chest, the flutter in her stomach, the tension in her shoulders. These sensations are not random. They are the body's language, messages from a nervous system finely attuned to safety and harm, to trust and betrayal. Neuroscience tells us that our body holds emotional memories, trauma, joy, pain, encoded in neural pathways and physical responses. This embodied knowledge is often more truthful than the noisy chatter of the mind. When a woman learns to listen with this kind of mindful attention, she gains access to a powerful source of wisdom. Instead of reacting from conditioned patterns or social expectations, she responds from a place of deep presence. This is not passive or passive-aggressive, it is an active, compassionate engagement with self and situation. Eastern philosophy often speaks of mindfulness, or awareness, as the gateway to liberation. This awareness is not about controlling or fixing experiences, but about witnessing them fully without judgment. Consider the story of Hannah, who after years of tumultuous relationships, decided to engage in daily meditation and body awareness practices inspired by traditional Qigong. At first, the subtle signals of discomfort or joy were difficult to discern amid the noise of her thoughts. But gradually, she developed a refined sensitivity to how different interactions affected her energy and emotional state. She noticed that certain conversations left her feeling depleted or anxious, while others fostered peace and expansion. This awareness allowed her to navigate her relationships with greater clarity, knowing when to engage deeply, when to step back, and when to gently release. This process is supported by what psychologists call interoception, the ability to sense internal bodily states. Strong interoceptive awareness is linked to emotional regulation, better decision-making, and resilience. When a woman cultivates this skill, she is less likely to be swept away by external dramas or the expectations of others. Instead, she becomes anchored in her own experience, making choices that honor her well-being and growth. Presence also transforms how forgiveness and letting go are experienced. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as a one-time event or a moral imperative. Yet, from an embodied perspective, forgiveness is an ongoing practice, a daily returning to the present moment with openness and kindness, even in the face of pain or betrayal. It requires recognizing the humanity in both oneself and the other, without denying the reality of harm. Letting go, too, is more than a decision. It is a process of gradually loosening the grip of attachment, anger, or sorrow that may have taken root in the body and mind. This process cannot be rushed or forced. It unfolds naturally when a woman remains present to her feelings without judgment, allowing them to arise, be felt, and eventually transform. The ancient Taoist teachings offer a beautiful metaphor: hear water flowing around obstacles rather than fighting them. In relationships, presence enables a woman to be like water, resilient, adaptable, and centered, rather than rigid or reactive. This quality does not mean passivity or tolerance of harm, but a deep alignment with the natural rhythms of life and change. In practical terms, cultivating inner awareness involves daily habits that integrate body, breath, and mind. Breath is perhaps the most accessible and immediate tool. Conscious breathing regulates the autonomic nervous system, reducing stress and enhancing clarity. When a woman feels overwhelmed by relational conflict or indecision about forgiveness or letting go, returning to her breath can ground her in the present and open space for insight. Posture and movement also play vital roles. When we hold ourselves with openness, shoulders relaxed, spine straight, head lifted, we signal safety to our nervous system and invite confidence and calm. Practices such as yoga, tai chi, or simple mindful walking cultivate this embodied presence,